Greetings and good evening. I'm excited to be here with you yet again on this evening on Book It. We are so excited to be here with you on today. I'm your host, Java Madison, and it is indeed a blessing to be here in the house. I have a very special guest that I'm excited about here today. But before we introduce, we just want to remind you that on last week we had Dr. Graham Watts. He was phenomenal on God transforms relationships. And listen, hey, if you were not able to get your free copy, we want you to go right now to our webpage. You can go to secsda.org/book it, and you will be able to get a free copy. We'll ship it out. We shipped some out last week, and we're just so excited to have been able to do that. So on this week, we have a very special guest. He happens to be my stepfather. His name is Tony Spence. And he is coming here today with an awesome book, and I have been blessed. Tony Spence, he has written the book entitled Desert Drama. And wow, wasn't there a lot of drama in the desert? And so without further ado, I'm so excited to bring him on at this time. Hello, Tony, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Pastor Jay. It's good to see you again. This is great.
Man.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, I'm just so glad and excited that you consented to come on and share what God has laid on your heart in your book entitled Desert Drama. But listen, before we get into Desert Drama, why don't you just tell the people, briefly about the other books that you have written. How many have you written so far?
I've officially written 6 in the series. There's going to be another 4 or 5 of them coming up. But it's basically going through the Bible. I started with Revelation as a test, put it on Amazon. It worked out. So then I went back to Genesis, and I'm just going right through the Bible and trying to put the truth out there about what the Bible says, trying to counteract what Hollywood is doing, Hollywood's flipping the whole thing upside down. It's making God the bad guy and making Satan the good guy, and so we're trying to put the truth out there. That's all it is.
Wow. So I'm reading your book, and I realize that you have a gift and a passion in writing. I mean, how long have you been writing?
Well, it started a long time ago when I was a kid. I think I was 9 years old. I was in the 4th grade. I started writing little stories. Started writing plays. I started with plays, and even almost put on a play there in the elementary school. But being in 4th grade, I wasn't able to do that. But that's how I got started, and then I went on to do short stories, and I published short stories for a long time back in the 90s, and then I started to think about doing longer works. But I've been doing a lot of research. I like research, and I've been researching a lot of things, and the Bible was the one thing that I started to do because of my passion for trying to, getting the truth out there. And it all started when I was in Florida. When I was in Florida working with the young people in their classes, they had a series of books which called the Conflict of the Ages series, which they went through, and they had workbooks with it. And I kept all those workbooks. And after I left the class, I went through the whole thing. Just studied the whole thing myself and expanded on it, and that's how I got all these manuscripts. And it went from there.
Well, listen, if you have joined us, we have his book entitled Desert Drama. You can get this book right now. I want you to click and share the like button. If you want a copy of his book, you can go to secsda.org/book it. And so here in this book entitled Desert Drama, right, you jump out and you go head first in talking about Joseph. Just explain to us, this drama that unfolded in the desert, in regards to the life of Joseph.
Well, going through with Joseph, remember, he was sold by his brothers as a slave, and they took him to Egypt. And this is where it all began. This is why it's called desert drama. It's going into Egypt, and from there he was sold as a slave into Potiphar's house. Potiphar was the captain of the Pharaoh's guards, and he was in that house for many years. And a lot of us know this story already, and we just go in there and just get deep into it. What it is, and now it takes the scriptures and it just makes it more alive and kind of puts you right into the setting of it. And
Yeah.
there's nothing, and I'm telling you, there's nothing here. I mean, Hollywood will insert things in there that are not in the Bible, but we don't have to do that here. We just use the Bible and we just use it just word for word, just doing it and just showing you just how God used these different characters.
So listen, I'm reading this book, Desert Drama, and one of the things that just sticks out, you want to catch this. This is one of the first principles in the book, Desert Drama, that you bring out. And here's what you said. Life is hard work. That's the title of your first chapter. Life is hard work. And you just bring out the hard work that Joseph had to endure. And this is what you said. Hey, listen, for everyone who's listening right now, this is a word. Here's what you said. You said in your book, Desert Drama, success seldom comes to the negligent, the idle, or the unprincipled. Hey, listen, Tony, that is a bombshell. So many people think that they're going to be successful. So many people think that they're going to, God is just going to bless them and put them in places that they have no business being when they just sit by and do nothing. Right. You know, and can I be honest? I mean, you know, the pandemic has really challenged us, right, to be disciplined, to keep a routine, to keep moving forward. Right. But this story just highlights how disciplined, you know, Joseph was. I mean, just talk to us, you know, about the life of Joseph and how his discipline allowed him to go from, as it were, the pit to the palace.
Well, he's just got to understand that he's 17 years old and he's been sold into slavery, and now he has decided, even as he was going to into Egypt, that he was going to just rely on his father's God. That's what he was going to do. He's going to rely on God, and God was going to get him through this. And in everything that he did, even though he was a slave, everything that he did it to God's glory. And and God blessed him for it. God blessed him. And on top of that, you see that Potiphar, who was his master, realized that God was with Joseph. Everything that Joseph did was a success. So he put Joseph in charge of his whole house. He was the overseer, and he was the one in charge. And listen, this was amazing. That what he had.
Exactly. That's amazing because, see, that's one of the things that you brought out in your book, that Joseph was so diligent. You know, he was so dutiful to task, right? That Potiphar recognized God's favor on his life. So the life that Joseph lived when he arrived to Egypt was a witness to the Pharaoh of Egypt. You know, this is what you said in your book. You said Potiphar's confidence in Joseph increased as he observed, and that really stuck out to me, the blessing of Joseph's God on his property in his house. So you're saying God's blessing, right, was on Potiphar's belongings because Joseph was present. I mean, that's mind blowing because, you know, my prayers for everyone that's watching right now, that God's favor is on your life, but not only that God's favor is on your life, but you are faithful to revealing who God is by your faithfulness, by your diligence. And, you know, this is a word for my young people and old alike, you know, because this diligence in task, you know, can put us in places and allow people to observe us, you know, that will be a benefit to us. And this is what you said in completing your statement. You said Joseph's diligence was a blessing on Potiphar's property, his house, and in the field, with the results that he eventually left to him the management of all his affairs. Can I,
Right.
can I prophesy in somebody's life right now that your faithfulness, your diligence in the small things, your excellence is going to exalt you in the nations, right? Because that's what happened to Joseph. So walk us through, because there were some bumps in the road. I mean, the title of this chapter is called "Life is Hard." How did that life get hard for Joseph, even though
Life
he was faithful?
life got hard, yeah, because well, he put his hand in the hands of God, and of course, sometimes we get into situations where um, we're in something that we're not, we didn't plan on being in there and everything, and but we still need to be we still need to let God lead us. And Joseph was doing his work, and but then he ran into problems. He ran into a problem. First, he ran into a problem with Mrs. Potiphar. They call him Mrs. Potiphar. We don't have a name for her. Okay, but she just kept. I mean, Potiphar. He is away, all the time. You know how men are. They're working and then they're never home, and so she's there by herself, and she sees this handsome young man there, and he's growing up so well, and she just wants him to be with her, and she just tries to get him alone here and there, and he does everything he can to get away from her. He does not want to be alone with her. And so but the thing is that she grabs him one day and he pulls away and runs away and leaves his tunic with her, and she makes up a story that he tried to take advantage of her, which he
Listen,
didn't
listen,
do.
listen, listen.
And that's
So
turned into a serious thing here. And all of a sudden, he is in such big trouble, even though Potiphar knows that Joseph probably didn't do this. But of course, he's a slave. So now Joseph ends up in prison because of this. Now
So
the thing.
back up. Time
Oh,
out,
okay,
time
all
out.
right, all right.
He loses his tunic. I mean, you can't, your ability to tell a story in this book, The Desert Drama, is just so amazing, because it was kind of comical how all of a sudden this tunic got in her hand, right? And she had to make up a story. But listen, this is one of the things that you said, right, about Joseph. And this is what I don't want our viewers tonight to miss, right? Though Joseph found himself in a foreign land, ripped from his position of favorite son in a wealthy home to the social status of a slave, God was still with him, at his side, to bless him and to help him. And that's why I like the way you nailed that down, because someone may feel stripped or ripped or done dirt or done wrong, but you need to know, child of God, that the story of Joseph, this drama, that unfolds in the desert, right, gives us a glimpse of hope that God is still with you, even in the situations we may find ourselves in. This is what you also said here in your book, Desert Drama. You said it is interesting to note that in telling of that's not the one you said. Let me see here. Here we go. Though he was conscious that God was watching him. So while he stripped away, he was conscious that God was watching him. It must have been a source of satisfaction to Joseph to know that his faithful service was appreciated by his earthly master. But all of that changed. And so that's where the story got loose on us.
Yeah.
But talk to us right now about, how Joseph found satisfaction that his earthly master acknowledged his faithful service, even though he had the satisfaction that God acknowledged his faithful service. Because I mean, some people are doing a lot of great things at work, but yet they may not get that affirmation they look for.
But again, I mean, it's like Potiphar was so happy with what Joseph was doing, that he put everything into his hands. He didn't have to worry about anything. Basically, Potiphar didn't even have to worry about what he had, what was going on, because Joseph was in charge. He was in charge of everything, and he had confidence in Joseph that he knew what he was doing, and that everything that he had was in good shape. And so he didn't have to worry about anything that was going on. When Joseph was in charge, he knew everything was under control, and that everything was going to be successful.
So listen here. So everything was in the control, but everything changed, and that's when we talked
Changes.
about how Joseph's tunic was left in her hand. And so talk to us, walk through with us the mind process of Potiphar as he recognized the accusation of his wife, but he understood the character of Joseph and how the story didn't match who he knew Joseph to be.
Well, you see, you have to remember that Joseph is a slave. He's a slave in Egypt. Slaves have no status. They have no rights, no whatever. They are property. That is it. And we're talking about a woman who is, has a lot of status and everything in the community. And so when she comes and has an accusation of, of rape or whatever it may be against a slave, there's nothing much that he can do. Either it's one of two things. Either the slave can be killed right there, or be thrown into prison. But as Potiphar heard the situation, he knew the character of Joseph, and he also knew his wife. Okay, and so
he knew his wife.
He knew his wife, and so as he's listening to the story, and of course Joseph's saying that no, that I would never do anything like that, or whatever. He knew Joseph was telling the truth, but because of the status, he knew that it was only one thing he could do. He wasn't going to kill him, but he was going to throw him into prison. That was the only thing he can do right now is to throw him into prison for this.
So throwing him, you mentioned your book. So throwing him into prison was a way of honoring his wife, but also honoring him, because really, if it was true, he should have been put to death.
She should have been put to death. Yeah.
So sometimes, I mean, this is mind blowing, but sometimes things may happen to us, that don't feel good, that don't appear right, that seem to be, not fair. But even in that, you're telling me God is in that.
God was in it. God,
that prison should have been a cooling board, right?
Well, prison. I mean, it's prison. You have to deal with
a lot better than death, right?
But it's better than death. Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. So, but of course, Joseph has to deal with all that. I mean, he went from being, in charge of all stuff, being in a home, being in charge of all that, to being thrown into like a dungeon, a prison. I mean, who knows what kind of conditions were there? But here he is. He's in the situation. He's saying, and I'm sure that he was like, very, very down, very, very discouraged.
Yes.
But
listen, this is drama.
But again, he trusted in God.
Wow.
He trusted in God through all of this here, even though he saw everything. I mean, life isn't fair. Life is hard. Life is not fair. Things are going to happen to you that you didn't plan on. And, what are you going to do? I mean, how are you going to go with it? And that's why, Joseph trusted in God through everything. And when he trusted in God, even when he went to prison, the warden of the prison saw the character of Joseph, saw how things worked with him, and pretty soon the warden gave Joseph certain jobs to do, and warden didn't have to worry about anything. Joseph was in charge of the prison.
So God is now elevating him again.
He's in charge of the prison. I mean, who ever heard of such a thing? But here he is. Joseph he's a Hebrew in a foreign land, and he is in charge. The warden puts him in charge of the prison.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing, because Potiphar's wife, when she accused Joseph of what she said he did, she also at the same time blamed her husband. Said,
that's right.
This slave who you brought us in the house. And you said that this shows how little respect she had for him, and accentuates her already vulgar and wanton character. You see, and then one of the things I thought was a real standout statement. You said it seems ever to have been a weakness of human nature to blame others for one's misdeeds. So she pointed the finger at him
That's how it
for
goes.
what
Yeah.
she did.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, that's amazing. But yet, even though it landed him in prison, God gave him favor. You said the same providence that helped Joseph in the house of Potiphar followed him. Hallelujah. Can I just shout right now, for the favor that's going to follow us,
Exactly.
regardless of what happens in our life. You said that the favor followed Joseph to the prison and brought back comfort to him in his new affliction. You right? You said the warden saw this and Joseph realized it was the favor of God. So here's where God is just, beginning to elevate, right? Joseph, in this newfound hard place.
That's it.
So now he's in prison. We know the story, and he begins to tell the dreams of the butler. Tell us about.
They have these two officials from Pharaoh who got thrown into prison. One is the butler or the cupbearer, who was they both went, and the baker was the other one. They offended the king in some kind of way. The Pharaoh. They were thrown in prison, and then on one night they both had a dream. They had a dream which confounded them. They didn't know what it meant, and they were sad the next day. Joseph came, saw them sad. And they told Joseph the dream, and because Joseph was in tune with God,
okay,
he interpreted their dreams. Okay, he interpreted their dreams, and he interpreted in such a way that those dreams came true. They came true because both of them had to do with 3 days. In 3 days, it would be Pharaoh's birthday, and that he would bring them out of the prison. He would elevate one, which would be the butler. He would elevate him, but then he would kill the baker. I don't know. That's the way it goes. But here it is that Joseph, and the thing is that the other thing I thought was with Joseph, he didn't really want to be there in prison. He knew what had happened, and he begged the butler. He begged the butler.
He said, "Hey, listen,
please,
send me a word
I'm a Hebrew. I'm a Hebrew. I was sold into slavery. Please speak to Pharaoh for me to get me out of this place." He begged with the butler. The butler saw that Joseph was correct. He got his job back, but he forgot Joseph.
He forgot.
And the thing is that you have to remember is that he was in prison for 2 more years.
Wow.
2 more years.
So in this 2 more years, God preserves him. And
right.
Then finally, Pharaoh has a dream.
And
now he remembers about Joseph back in the prison.
The butler realizes that, oh, Lord, I forgot that there was this Hebrew when I was in prison. Myself and the baker had dreams, and this Hebrew, he identified. So he told us our dreams, what the meanings of our dreams were, and so I'm so sorry, I forgot all about him. So the Pharaoh had Joseph taken out of prison. Okay.
God is elevating.
Cleaned up everything.
Pause. I just want to say a word, because see, there can't be enough said about your relationship with the Lord. Your personal relationship with the Lord, can't anyone take it away from you. And believe it or not, your relationship that you have with God, that you seek him out daily with, will make manifest God's favor on your life. And that's exactly what happened to Joseph. Joseph didn't forget about God, but God didn't forget about him. And so even when you see man forgets you, what blessed me about your book is that how you showed, how God created a situation that forced the butler to remember about his servant Joseph that was left in the prison.
The thing about it too is that Joseph did not take credit.
Okay.
He did not take credit for interpreting the dreams.
Oh wow!
Both the butler and baker, and for Pharaoh. He made sure that everybody knew that God was the one who
So this is what you
interprets
said.
things.
You said Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I have had two dreams that troubled
Hmm.
me, and these men cannot interpret them for me. I
Yep.
have been told that you interpret dreams. Is that true?" Joseph answered, "I cannot do so, Your Majesty. But
Hmm. But
my God can." And this is
yes,
what you said. You
yes.
said, in all modesty, Joseph pointed Pharaoh away from himself to the God of heaven, as he had to the two prisoners 2 years early. So that's one thing you really bring out about the humility, and maybe the humiliation of Joseph led to his humility. You see,
Mm.
and that humility is that character that was always seen to be faithful in the small things, to be dutiful
Yes,
in those things that aren't always pleasant, right?
yes.
Not because someone expects them of you, but that's because that's what God has called you to do. I mean, I found that so amazing, and when God did exalt him, again,
Again,
and Pharaoh made him right over everything again, this
yes.
time not just in his house, but outside of his house to all of Egypt. This is
Hmm.
what you said, and I love it. You said, moreover, it should not be forgotten that the hand of God, by which he had been so highly exalted after the deep humiliation, also preserved him in his lofty position of honor from the sinking into the heathenism of Egypt. Just speak to us briefly, real briefly, because we only got about 4 more minutes. We've got a youth week of prayer coming right after us.
Hmm.
But speak to us briefly, about the reality that God preserved him in Egypt, because some people feel like, hey, you can't have lofty positions in the world because it's going to corrupt you. But there was something about his relationship that preserved him. Talk to us really quick.
Well, the thing is that Joseph was he depended on God, and God took him through. He saw that God blessed him in everything. Egypt is a place where they have so many gods. They have so much, the god of the air, god of the wind, God of everything. But but he did not allow any of this to come into his life, and it is possible. I mean, we see it with different characters in the Bible. We see it that if you allow God, if you keep your eyes focused on God, and not allow the different distractions of the world to come into your life at all, you let God lead you. He will preserve you. He will keep you. He will keep you sheltered. He will keep you focused on your ideals, on your purpose. And that is what Joseph did. That's what Joseph
Listen,
did.
listen,
He stayed
listen,
firmly
God.
and purposed on in his focus on his purpose.
Listen, when you focus on your purpose and you serve the Lord, God just has a way of preserving you. And I'm just so glad that even though the drummer broke loose in the desert in Egypt,
Yeah.
that God had a servant, a faithful servant, in that of Joseph. Listen, in our final moments, this is
Yes.
what you said. What a change God had brought about in the life of Joseph. His fetters were exchanged for a chain of gold, the prisoner's rags for fine linen, his cell for a chariot, and his jail for a palace. You preaching now, Tony. Potiphar's slave had become his Lord, and the clank of chains, I like the way you talk, had given away to the exclamation of do homage. So every time that he would go down the street, they would exclaim, do homage. This
That's
this
right.
this this humiliation turn into homage. And that's what God wants to do in each and every one of our lives. And this is my final thought from your book, and I'm going to give you the final word in the last 30 seconds. Humility goes before honor. Servitude and suffering were the stepping stones to authority. How well was God's faithful servant repaid for his loyalty and patience? Listen, I've had a time with you, Tony. I want everybody to go to our link there and get the book. It's free. It's free. I have a few free copies, but click on the link there on our site, and you will be able to go to Amazon.com. But go to secsda.org, book it for a free copy. I'm going to ship out to you. Tony, send us out with your final word.
Final word is this. I love the story of Joseph. I love it because Joseph was an honored child in his home, but he went to Egypt and he learned to trust in God. And he learned, even though he was knocked around and though he went through this and that, he decided to trust in God, and God honored him. Honored everything. He was put in charge of things, and he kept going up until he was the prime minister of a country, and he saved his not only Egypt, but he also saved Canaan, his land, his father's house. And so again, God said in there, he said, his to his brothers, he had said that yes, you made it, you saw it for harm, but God did it for good. He did it. He put Joseph there to save them. If they didn't sell him into Egypt as a slave, he would not have been there. They would have all died. You see,
Wow.
he helped them to be.
Yes.
He preserved his people. So I mean,
Well, listen, thank you so much, Tony. That's our time. Humility before honor. May God bless you as you serve faithfully wherever you are, wherever you're listening. May the favor of God rest upon you, and may His Spirit be upon you to be faithful. Hey, this is my time with Tony Spence, author of Drama Desert. Go to secsda.org/book it for your free copy. Look forward to see you on next week, where we're going to be talking about Out of Egypt with John Coaxum. We're just so excited. Look forward to see you.